Hey there, me again. I know I'm super excited about this stuff, and so every day I'm learning more things, and I wanted to share it. Yes, I'm in my car again. My husband was kind enough to bring me gas because I got to my appointment and realized I was completely on empty. Adulting is hard. Being an adult is hard sometimes, so yay for backup people. He's awesome. Anyway, earlier today I posted on socials a video. It's a TED Talk by a doctor by the name of Christopher Kerr, I believe. And he referred to a phenomenon that I've had a little bit of experience with called, I think he called it pre-death illumination. And by this, what he's explaining is folks who are dying who are having an auditory or visual or sensory experience that no one else in the room is having. He used an example of a woman who was cradling a baby, and she called whatever she was holding, the child she was holding that no one else could see, by the name of Darren, I believe. Nobody knew that she had a child by that name. They didn't know of a child by that name, but her sister was later able to confirm that she had actually lost a child that she had named Darren. Yet, at the time of her death, she was able to interact with that child in a way that was meaningful to her and brought her comfort. I've mentioned that I don't have a lot of experience with the death process itself. I've got decades of experience with the dead. My earliest memory is when I was 2 years old, so I got lots of years of dead experience with folks who've already crossed over. But this is going to be fairly new to me. But I have witnessed that phenomenon in the past. The most recent one was with my father-in-law when he was dying. He lived a couple hundred miles from us at the time. By choice, he was not a kind man, and he was a very difficult person to get along with and caused a lot of damage in his family. But that's a whole other story. But we got the call that time was getting near, and so we hopped in the car and drove up to where he was. He was nonverbal at that time. He was sitting in a recliner in the living room, and as my husband is there tending to his mother and other family members that have come to say goodbye, I'm just sort of sitting on the couch, and I see two people with him, people that only I could see. Apparently, I'm assuming he could also see them, but I couldn't confirm that with him at the time because he wasn't verbal. One was an older woman, and my husband, apparently I get a look when I'm talking to someone he can't see, so he asked me who I was looking at or talking to, and I described the woman standing there and said, her attitude is, well, I'm here, that's what you do, you show up when people die. And he knew immediately that was his grandmother, his father's mother, that apparently that was what she was like in life. So she was there, but there was another man there. He was wearing green army fatigues, the kind from Vietnam, the solid green. I'm sorry, I don't know what they're called. And he said, I'm here to tell him it wasn't his fault. And I didn't really know what that meant, and I didn't put a lot of stock in it. There were a lot of living people around, there were a lot of dead people around also, and so I just sort of tried to be there for my husband. Later that night, we're driving home. It's, like I said, a couple hundred miles away, and this man in the green army fatigues is sort of floating off to the side of the car, carrying on this conversation with me, and he tells me the story of how he knew my father-in-law. I knew that my father-in-law in Vietnam had fought in Vietnam and had flown and worked out of helicopters, that he flew a number of missions, I don't know how many, where he was a gunner and would lay down fire in order to extract American service members from jungle situations. In this particular situation, the man showed me it both from his perspective and from what must have been from my father-in-law's perspective. And I say showed me, it's kind of hard to explain. For me, it's like remembering a memory. It has colors and silence and all those other things that we have when we remember things. But I could see first from the man's perspective, he's running toward the helicopter, which is landed in the middle of a meadow with really deep grass, and there's jungle all around it, very dense jungle. And I can see my father-in-law standing in the helicopter shooting a gun, and my father-in-law makes fire in order to help this man get on the helicopter and be extracted. One moment he's there, and the next moment he's gone. I can only assume that he stepped on a landmine. I didn't see the burst of cloud of blood that I think they say happened. I'm assuming that was because he was close enough and the rotors were pushing down. I don't know. I wasn't physically there. But one moment he was there, and the next moment he just disappeared. Then he showed it to me from my father-in-law's perspective, where you can see this man running out of the jungle, turning toward him, and then he disappears. And my father-in-law registering that he was no longer going to be able to save him, turning to try to save other people. I was able to confirm that my father-in-law did do those actions in Vietnam. But I wasn't able to confirm this particular story with him, only through the man who was with him when he died, who had also crossed over before my father. So, as for driving, this man tells me, you have to tell him, he points to my husband, that I'm one of the 13. He'll know what it means. Tell him I'm one of the 13. I don't know what this means. I know that my husband's overwhelmed right now. He's got a lot going on, and he freaks out over this kind of stuff, and he doesn't believe in any of this, and I'm sure it's difficult to accept. I don't expect him to without evidence. He's an engineer, so I have a lot of respect for his own belief system. But this man was insistent that I tell him that he was one of the 13. So I tell my husband, this man that was with your dad earlier. I tell him the story of what this man showed me, and I tell him, he said to tell you he's one of the 13 and you'll know what that meant. And then the man says, well, 14, and he kind of laughs. I didn't show that part with my husband because it sounded ridiculous enough, the story I was telling. My husband says immediately, I know exactly what he's talking about. I know exactly what he's talking about. You've seen it. I'm like, I don't have any memory of this. So we get home. He goes upstairs to his office and goes through, I can see him going through photo albums, the old timey ones, not the ones on our phones that he actually had to print, flip, and put into books. But he opens it to this page, and he's rifling through, and he points to a picture, and he said, this is the one. And sure enough, the man's in the picture. There are 13 people standing around an open helicopter, and this man is in that picture. So is my father-in-law. And there's a dog. So there were 14 souls in front of the helicopter in the picture. I'll post a picture of that. That story still sort of blows my mind. When I say that I'm a skeptical shaman, I mean that literally. I've been fortunate enough to have a therapist who also believes in spiritual things and doesn't understand at all how I can do this work with the degree of skepticism that I carry on a daily basis. So I have no explanation for this that's rational, and that I can explain it through something that I've seen. Maybe I saw that picture before. It would have been flipping through a photo album of someone else's memories. I wouldn't have counted people. I wouldn't have remembered this man from that picture. I didn't remember him from the picture until I looked at it and recognized him in the picture. But this is really comforting to me. Dr. Kerr talks about how he's now studied over 1,500 individual cases of this phenomenon, cross-cultural, cross-religious belief systems. Not only do we have those people on this side with us when we die, like hospital workers, hospice folks, our relatives, apparently we have people from over there that come to help us make that transition also. And that gives me so much comfort to know that we are fully supported when we make that transition. And I don't believe it's paranormal. For a long time, we couldn't explain planets in space. There's still so many things we don't have an explanation for, and I believe this is one of them. Science just needs to catch up. It's not paranormal, it's normal. Someday we'll be able to explain it in a way that's meaningful and makes sense to even the most engineering of minds. And I hope I'm alive for that day, just because I think it would be extremely gratifying, and I might myself would like to actually see an explanation of how this is real. Things I've experienced in my life that I know I have no explanation for, like this man in this picture with 13 people, 14 counting the dog.